Time for a quick update. So it sort of runs. The ECU sort of throws a check engine light. Currently got a code 6 after spending about a day chasing wires trying to figure out why the check engine light wasn't coming on at all. It's odd because obviously there's no water temperature sensor plugged in. I did chase some wires. They are making it to the engine bay. But there's also no O2 sensor, and there's also no idle air control valve connector, but it's only throwing the code 6. So at some point here, I'm going to break into the ECU, see if it's chipped, and maybe those codes are turned off, but I do think that's pretty odd. Project for today, I'm going to try to clean up this temporary mess. I'm tired of tripping over the cord. Right now, we've got the jumper cables run to the starter and powering this ordeal and grounded out. So I'd like to do a battery relocation. Not going to be too finalized. It's going to be a little bit more temporary. Haven't decided on my battery size. And haven't really decided on location. I'm thinking behind the passenger seat in that area, but yeah, we'll see. So first step is going to be seeing how many amps this starter draws. It's pretty cold in the garage right now, about 32. I haven't turned the furnace on yet. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be pretty worst case. So let's get into it. Borrowed this amp clamp from my buddy Jake. Gonna set this up on the positive lead. You watch it, and then I'll go ahead and play it back. I'm gonna go ahead and crank it over. And we'll see what our DC, what our cranking amps are. Hopefully, we'll be able to see that. Maybe it starts, maybe it doesn't. Well, the idle air control valve is unplugged, so it doesn't really like to start cold. If I can't flip this around and read it. So I'm seeing it peak out at about 137 amps. So we're going to take a look at some online calculators. And see what kind of wire gauge we need to go ahead and relocate this thing. How about that? So this is 0 gauge. It seems like most people online are fusing this at over 150 amps, which I suspect, based upon that draw, that's about where I'm going to be for a main fuse or a main breaker. So let's go ahead and get this routed in. We're going to do kind of a loose install just because I don't have a grommet just yet for the firewall. I've got some options, but they're rubber, so I'm not too keen on that, just because the risk of shorting out onto the firewall is a little bit higher. I'd like to check into Home Depot and see maybe if they've got a non-metallic option. If I bring you in here, this was already in the firewall, and I've since removed it and put a plug in it, but that could be an option. Point is, I want to figure out what I'm doing there before I get too excited and crimp the ends on, and then make it difficult to pass the wire through whatever grommet I wind up choosing. So we'll go ahead and remove the hot lead from the starter. And my plan is to use this kind of as the junction block for everything. Basically run this main power, which comes into the fuse box here, onto an eyelet there, and then connect everything up. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, it will as we start routing stuff. Hopefully 15 feet is enough. I know initially I looked at some lengths. Oh, this seems like it's going to be plenty. I know as I want to run up the firewall, I may need some extra length, but the car is very short, so I might be able to put it wherever. Kind of like this. Something like that. And then we can attach it to the firewall, or sorry, the strut tower, similar to how this factory loom's routed. Routed in here. I like this. So this is copper clad aluminum, and I like how flexible it is. I haven't used a lot of high gauge wire outside of home wiring, and that stuff is really stiff by comparison. Seems like plenty of distance, which is great because then I've got options for snipping a little bit off and running my ground cable. So I don't know exactly where I'm going to ground this thing out yet. But make it all the way to the trunk. No problem if I wanted to put it back there. So I think that's where I'll start, actually, is in the trunk, and then I'll just do something real temporary with my ground. Probably more jumper cables, but at least they won't be in this area when I'm trying to work, and I won't be tripping over them. Also, it'll be nice to be able to raise and lower with the car, because that's been a concern, straining those jumper cables as I've been getting under the car. Now we'll try to crimp this guy, at least on this end. I believe this terminal end is going to be good size for that starter stud, which looks to be M8. Cool, that fits nicely. So we'll go ahead and strip this wire back. where it becomes apparent I have no idea what I'm doing. The car audio guys probably be a great reference for this. I'm gonna just strip back the insulation. To the point where the terminal ends. I don't know if it's supposed to stick out just a little bit further. I should probably look it up, but yeah, we got plenty of length to make a mistake with. We got a few terminal ends to play with, so not too big of a concern. Also got shrink tubing. Got red shrink tubing for red, for the positive side. So we will go ahead and try that. Oops, lost a couple of strands there. I thought about, and maybe there is enough space, also crimping in the power lead here. I don't know if I want to do that just yet. I like the option of removing it from the car entirely. And if I go ahead and crimp that in, I can still remove it. I just have to disconnect that. I think I'm talking myself into it. Let's see if there's enough space. Stay. This thing is just as it found it. I don't know if this is actually the factory lead or not. It looks like also aluminum. Sumitomo VX. I suspect that is factory. Let's see if we can jam this guy in there as well. Like so. Is that a mistake? I don't know. Seems fine. Go ahead and jam the shrink tube over it. I have no idea how much the shrink tube is going to shrink. It seems excessively large. Let me figure out what I did with my utility knife. This is a common problem with as disastrous as the garage is, where I am constantly losing my tools. As soon as I set them down, they're gone forever. This seems excessively large to me. I'm kind of inclined to do a test shrink and see, because I have other shrink tube. Maybe we just try and shrink this on the insulator there and see. It seems wildly too big to me. Unfortunately, the shrink tube that I have is black. And I'd like some sort of visual indicator that this wire is hot. I could have got red wire. I didn't really want the red wire poking through, is what happened here. So let's just do a little, we'll cut a piece off of this. We'll do a test shrink. We'll see if we're on the right track or not. I mean, really, it seems comically large. don't know how to show you this as I'm doing it without burning everything up in here. Just go like that. Is that in frame? No idea. Well, I don't know. It did shrink up a lot. Okay. I think it's going to be just fine. I was worried for nothing. It's real gummy. But cool. We'll go get a new piece of that and we'll put it on there. Not too keen on the logo that's on it, so we'll try and get that facing down, I guess. Maybe it comes off easy. No, doesn't seem to want to come off, but yeah. Oh wow, I totally got ahead of myself here. We were only wanting to put that over. We still need to crimp this guy. So no idea how that's gonna go for us. There are a couple of loose strands on this factory wire that I'd like to get tucked in there, but I suppose it's not the end of the world. Let's open this kit and see what we got. I've never used it. Looks like we got some 6-gauge dies in it. Alright, so we found the 0-gauge dies. And I think I've got these oriented wrong. What we got here on. Oh. All right. And that seems simple enough. Let's see if we can't mess this up. What? Open more? I don't understand. The crimp doesn't fit in the die, in the jaw width. Maybe we need to smash it down without the die first. Just a little bit. Seems kind of wrong, but I wonder how far this thing goes. So that's it. So we can't smash it down either without putting some sort of shim in there. Interesting. Get it kind of ovaled out. Still doesn't fit. What the heck? Yeah, still doesn't fit. Maybe you got the wrong type of crimps. It seems that these have a slit in them. I wonder. Maybe we should try and roll those in first, see what happens. More standard crimp shape, I think. Boy, I need some more leverage. This is proving to be quite tough. And close it in on itself. Oh, God. Wow. How about now? Okay. All right, let's go for it. It's in between the jaws. Pretty centered on the I only think some of it's in there. This is very interesting. I don't know. Is that adequate? Let's give it a little pull test, see what happens. I'm not thrilled that this portion pulled out or squeezed out, but I think it'll be okay. I'm wondering if I want to try and crimp it again in a different location. I got it about in the center there. I think it's going to be fine. Vote we go for it. Heat this thing up.
trying to be a little bit more delicate with the heat and avoid wrinkles. I don't know if that's how it works, but it seemed to me I went too high on the heat. Some areas shrunk very quickly and got kind of wrinkly. Although maybe I'm not putting enough heat into it. Oh boy, is that what I wanted? Got this weird wrinkle. Just as I was saying what I didn't want to do, I went and did it. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. I've got some caps coming as well. I think factory setup, you'd usually see that this terminal end is capped. You wouldn't have it just an exposed stud like that. I'm sure it's got dry rotted and rotted away like 100,000 miles ago, but we'll do something about it. I don't know if it's going to be big enough. Initially I was thinking I was going to wind up with 4-gauge wire, and then kind of came to the conclusion that I should just overkill it and do it once and not be worried about my wire burning up. So let's go ahead and we'll screw this down, knowing full well it's got to come back off. When we get caps, and maybe the terminal end needs a little bit of shaving down to fit under that. We'll see as we get it. But hey, that looks pretty tidy. Maybe these get zip tied together and then secured to the firewall or the strut tower somehow. But I'm pretty happy with that. So we definitely don't want it chafing on the motor mount or anything. That's a pretty sharp edge. So we'll have to do something there, whether that's some more of this protection or just securing it better. Let's go ahead and snug this guy up. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and bring you over here and try and watch what I'm doing. You can see the wire back there. Right there? It's hard in the dark. Let me get some more light. Yeah, I ran into this before, where the CRX is so narrow that I can't use my light bar, which is just a ridiculous problem to have. Maybe here up front and back. Maybe we just jam it on, stick it here. It'll be good enough. A little bit out of the way. Grab that battery, slap it in. We don't have a battery box We do have a battery box. I think it's too small for this battery. I think for the time being, look at all this junk. I really need to clean, but it's just been go, 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 try to figure out, sort things out, and not really so much shop vacuuming. I know that when I want to go ahead and paint this thing, it's going to be an ordeal with the shop vacuum. So I'm trying not to get too bothered by it and shop vac now and then need to shop vac come the spring. So, right, let's try that battery box. I don't know, might fit. The off-the-shelf battery that I happen to have and the off-the-shelf battery box that I happen to have might fit just fine. Of course, I don't have battery tie-downs. So, maybe we got some figuring to do there. But these are cheap. I think this was like $10 smaller. Look at that. Hard to be upset with that. Maybe it goes over here. Maybe it goes all the way to the trunk. I was thinking right here, just because it's a fairly flat spot. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's going to be, obviously my weight is going to have some impact here. I don't think it's going to be a huge ordeal, but obviously I want it on the passenger side of the car. Oh yeah, this is a ton of cable. I don't know what I was doing when I was measuring, but kind of landed upon 17 feet and then hemmed and hawed about 15 feet. And 15 feet seems excessive, but it's good to have options in case I do want to run it in that spare tire well. I don't really know where I want to ground this thing out just yet. And I don't have battery terminal ends. Those are on the way. Just jump that on there. So I think what we're going to do for now is just strip it back just far enough. Where at some point we can put a terminal end on it. But for now it will be a ghetto jumper cable in the back of the car, out of my way solution. Which I think I can be pretty happy with. And then later this evening, maybe I'll take a trip out to the Home Depot, see what they got for conduit options. I'm thinking there's a, maybe I already said it, probably sounding like a broken record. I think there's probably a non-metallic conduit option for like the waterproof conduit. And that might be the play there. So I'm gonna twist this. Well, maybe that was the move up front too, but I didn't do that. So potentially terminal end can go on there. And then we'll just go ahead and get the jumper cables back out. Jam the positive lead in alongside the battery pretty deep so that hopefully there's no risk of that getting ground out. You can tell why I got my carpet in here. Getting hurt on the old knees. And the exciting part will be seeing if this thing still starts or if it tries to burn to a crisp with this length of wire. So we'll go ahead and just ground this out somewhere. Hopefully make a decent connection there. Go ahead and grab this. I don't know how well that's going to work. It's iffy, but it's in there. And then we'll go ahead and connect our leads up to the battery itself. Fuel pump's pumping. There's some smoke. See, my ground is not the best. Might have to run a bolt through it. This has all been painted, so may need to grind back some paint. No mercy for that starter. Fortunately, this cable is feeling nice and cool to the touch. I'm not, I don't have any fears right now. Like I said, I think it's going to get a 150 amp resettable breaker fused or breakered very near the battery. Breakered a word? But cool. Glad to have that out of my way. Oh, I love it when the shot is just behind the A-pillar and you can't see anything. It's good fun. All right, so next I'm debating whether or not I want to remove the wiring harness to try to add or splice in the correct wires for that coolant temperature sensor for the ECU. Also the coolant temperature sensor for the cluster, which is separate, is disconnected. I don't have a proper end for that, it's just a bullet connector. But I'm between tackling a little bit more wiring or putting the radiator in this thing. I've only run it for very short periods of time. Obviously, you can tell there's no cooling system on this, so it's been like a minute here, a minute there. Initially, it was idling very high, so I was playing with that a little bit and was able to knock that down. It seems like it's happily idling around 700 if I had to guess based upon the cluster. Let me think about that, and we'll crack on with whichever project. So you know the that 2x4 meme where the dad has been storing the 2x4 for this very specific occasion? Turns out that I have similarly been hoarding these connectors. These are off of a CRV that I had back in 2016 timeframe. These happen to be very common on this era of Honda, as it turns out. These 2-wire connectors, and this is the connector that I need for the coolant temperature. So I did a test fit. These fit very nicely, nice solid snug fit, and they're OEM. What I was noticing is I get to be a little bit choosy. This one, I don't know if you can see that. may make its way to the trash because the insulator's broken. This back plug is extremely crispy. And then got this longer one as an option. I don't know if this was, I think it's the same connector for intake air temp. But I may just get away with running this and not needing to splice in any wires except for at the main harness. Whereas this one, obviously, I'm going to need to add a little bit. It's about a foot away, I would say. Of course, I'm just guessing because the wires are apparent in these two connectors, and they run somewhere, but I'm not sure where. And then I've got a bunch of other loose wires. My apprehension towards ripping open this harness and potentially taping it back up is I just don't believe that the codes are correct. Let me put these somewhere where I won't lose them. So I guess that's step one. Let's rip into the ECU, see if it's chipped. Maybe some of these codes are turned off, and go from there. So here's my PR4 ECU. You can see it there. This is an OBD1 variety. You can tell because of the number of connectors on the back there. Don't mind the dust. And then the adapter set to get it back out to OBD0, which the harness is. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what we got. Big reveal. Oh, if I can get the lid off. I have to admit, I don't know what I'm looking for. I have a little bit of experience with these ECUs. I believe the chip would be there if it was chipped. Looks like a virgin ECU, not socketed, not chipped. Connectors look to be in pretty good shape. The only, my previous experience was one of the injector wires had corroded on a CRV. And basically there was a drip down through the wiper area and rotted off one of these connectors. And so I just soldered straight onto the board, ran a wire out, spliced it into the connector, and that was good enough. So that's really my only exposure to these. I'm going to do a quick Google, confirm that what I believe is true, and I don't know, maybe it just doesn't throw codes for idle air control or O2 sensor. Both of those seem very strange to me though. So I think what I'm going to try and do now is unwrap some of this wire harness and see if we can't tap into that and make the coolant temperature sensor work correctly. Maybe once we get that code cleared, we can start seeing some other ones. I don't know why that would be the case, but it's the lead we got right now. All right, so as you just saw, I spent a bunch of time going through the engine wiring harness. There were a couple of issues that came to bite me. Mostly my assumption that because this engine came out of this car and it was running and driving, that things would be in the correct location, but that didn't turn out to be the case. I think this is probably why people say don't buy someone else's project. One of the issues was that the idle air control valve connector was plugged into the oil pressure sender. Obviously not much going on there with that being wrong. Another issue was the water temperature connector for the ECU was plugged into the sensor under the thermostat, which is just a continuity sensor, and that runs the fan relay, which we'll get into at some point. fixed the broken connector for the throttle position, and just generally tidied things up as I was going through. I've got the harness back in the car. Let me get you in here and show you what we've done. So as you can see here, I did a little bit of tidying with the power lead. Went ahead and tied that to the firewall. We've still got some flex there, but much more secure. I think it looks very nice. I still need to figure out what I'm going to do for a grommet to pass it through the firewall there. Because that's still a very sharp edge that needs to be addressed. As far as the engine harness goes, we've got the harness tied down and some of this plastic shielding covering areas instead of just tape, which is how it came to me. But I only had so much of it, so only some of it got addressed. I also routed the O2 sensor wires that we fixed the pinout for. They're passed through the firewall right through here. Let's go ahead and fire it off for us, see how it runs. I did notice that it was starting much easier and not setting a check engine light anymore, so I'm pretty happy about that. See, the tach is reading. Coolant temperature should be reading. Fuel gauge is now down near empty, which checks out. And the speedo is functioning. I hear the occasional burble. I think those are misfires. I do have new plugs for this, so we'll get there eventually. And I also was able to confirm that unplugging obvious sensors like the map do set a check engine light. So I'm confident that that is working. So I think that's going to do it for today's video. Really appreciate you hanging out. Have a good one.